All right, let's talk about React UIKitten for React Native. So it's a mobile framework, lots of UI customization options. You can do CSS frameworks like Bootstrap, so it's kind of like that for React Native, and it's meant to bring your MVP to life in a shorter period of time. And so the main benefit of using it is to be able to create styles and configurations easily and just, make them once and keep using them all over the place. So it's basically like a way to theme things and create components. So it's just a set of UI components, and the way you install it is you just do npm install. Save basically allows you to save it in the package or JSON, so that whenever you run npm install, it gets installed on the system, and you can install React Native UIKitten. So if you are basically importing a button, let's say a button, so I think of RK as React Kitten. So here we have React Kitten button that we're importing from React Native UIKitten, and then we just render our view with the RK button in it, which let's say says click me. So in my code, I might basically go in and go to let's say just creating this RK button and then say submit 67, whatever I want to say. On my login button, maybe I can say RK button on press, blah, blah, blah. And then it says text login here. Let me go and do RK button. And just we'll put login in here. And I'll save that. And I know you can't see my device right now, but even though you can't see my device, I have an error here because of that. Okay, so as you can see, I have now created an RK button which says login on here, and that's what I see on my device, a button with login on there. So anyway, let's continue back to our getting started documentation here with UIKitten. So this worked. I just tried it. I didn't show you my device, but that's okay. It's just a button. You can imagine. Now, customization. All components are flexible and can be customized. More details about stylization can be found here. If I do that, it takes me to the next section on customization. So we are just going to read through this customization section here. And let's see. So customization is really extensible and easy and beautiful and elegant and simple. I mean, seriously, like all these adjectives, let's get straight into it. Archetype. So let's just go through the headings here quickly for customization. And so basically, what are we customizing here? We're customizing the actual, UIKitten. We're customizing, components and styles. Okay, so archetype, default components, style aliases, platform-dependent styles, default values, themes, inherit archetypes. Using extract non-style value method. And so here, extract non-style value method. So basically we have some styling here before this method call. And then we extract a non-style value placeholder text color from this style. And so style and placeholder color after the method call. Okay, so basically when we run this, then the placeholder text color gets removed from the style object and just becomes its own variable. So basically we were just extracting values out of our style sheet and calling them, they're not really as non-style value, and just putting it into our JavaScript as a variable of its own. So I saw this method getting used in some of the components, like this gradient button that was created here, gradient button. And in this gradient button here, you can see that we got the styles, and then we took the gradient style, and then we took the colors out of it as its own variable. And then we went and said if the colors property is set, then we'll say that's the colors. Otherwise, we'll take the colors out of the gradient here. So not the best kind of coding in terms of how I like things, but that's how these libraries are doing things in JavaScript, so whatever. All right. So that's the extract on style value. Going up in here, inheriting archetypes. So before we talk about inheriting archetypes, we should probably talk about archetypes. And so what are archetypes? They are basically, the components have an archetype property. And you can think of them as HTML class property. So basically, like, here we have a RK button, right? So the button is, we have a button component, and it has an archetype of outline and small. So basically, it's going to become a small outlined button, right? So archetype is basically just a fancy way of saying class name or class, depending on what you're using, because class is a reserved word in TypeScript, and so class name is being used as representing class in TypeScript. All right, so you get the idea about archetype, right? And you can create your custom archetypes for specific components. And the way you can create these custom archetypes are by basically saying, hey, I want to do an RK theme, set type, RK button, accent. So basically I'm creating an accent type RK button. And this button is going to basically have a background color accent and the white content color. Okay. Platform even. Okay, so we want to go back to inheriting the archetypes. So you're able to create your custom archetypes that based on other archetypes. And so the fourth parameter of this method, archtheme.setType, is array or string with parents archetypes. So here we're doing this archtheme.setType. So basically we are creating a new archetype for arctext called inherited. And this inherited type can inherit other archetypes like basic and danger. So these may be defined. Basic is defined to have some font size, color, background. And so as a result, we'll have an inherited type with the basics and with our text, right? And the danger color, because that came after. Alright, so that's how we did the extracting non-style values, right? Take them out of the style sheet and make them a JavaScript variable. We did the inheriting of these archetype. Basically, when you set them up, you can pass in an extra parameter with what you're inheriting from. Okay, in inheriting, you saw that we basically were setting these using this Archetype. So all of these basic archetypes depend on the theme. And the theme contains these base values like colors and font and whatever. So like when you saw we were defining basic here, we said theme.fonts.sizes.base or theme colors text base. So basically what we're saying is like, you know, the font size or color or whatever defined by the theme. And you can easily override the theme values by using archeThemeSetType. Right, so basically we're creating a primary background archetype text. And user-defined archetype should be able to respond to theme changes. And so for this purpose, property functions can be used instead of values. So another thing is like when we say background color, instead of just saying like a value of a background color, we can also use a function like, you know, take the theme and take theme colors primary from it. Okay? So theme is available as an input in here. And so in the case the theme has been switched using archeThemeSetTheme, the archetype will also change and all the components will be updated as well. And sometimes there's necessity to use their values for regular components. And in that case, you need to use ArcheStyleSheet. Okay. We will talk about style sheets later or now or whatever. Yeah, okay, so default values. Sometimes it's useful to set default style for all components. Right, so you just say, hey, archetype basic. So all the standard components have default type basic, right? And if you want to change it, you can just override it. And so let's change the color of all the architects. So that's your basic style. So that's basically your default style, basic, right? So basic is your default archetype. Okay? Alright, platform dependent styles. Some cases may be necessary to write different styles depending on our current platform, right? So you might have like your iOS versus your Android or something. You can do that. So like when you're defining it, basically you just pass in iOS colon and Android colon as an object for that style. Okay. Default component style aliases, right? So Archetypes, for example, here. So all the Archetypes components consist of internal components, right? So like touch opacity with some content is basically an Archetypes. And so in order to, you can control the styling of each internal component of all the RX components, provide special style mapping elements. So in case of Archetypes, they are container and content. And you can style them in an explicit way you can see above. Right, so that was basically our archetype So I don't know why we continued discussing Archetype in the default component section, but we did. So, but every Archetype component also has a default internal component to which all the non-explicit styles will be applied implicitly, and there can be defined aliases. Case of Archetype button, there is a container is default, and there exists a color for the content. And so we can rewrite the code above. So we did Archetype theme, set type, and then we put container and content. But we can just forget about this container content and just put background and color. Just like CSS. Alright, so we got our archetype, we got our default component style aliases. We got our platform dependent stuff. We talked about our default values using basic. We talked about themes. We talked about inheritance, and we talked about extracting non-style values. And so that's the customization part. And then in the next section, we will go over more details on theme. So that will be the next video. For now, I'm going to stop here with the customization. I'm Aditya Mittal, your host today, and I hope you enjoyed learning. Okay,